I'm R.R. Moore, and welcome to Info Prime. Here, I hope to provide you with information not normally available, or at least enhance your understanding on a wide variety of topics. This installment offers information on... Hi. Almost weekly, we see in the news something about the controversy surrounding the dispute over land between Israel and the Palestinians. If one only read or saw the news, one would believe that Israel only wants to deny Palestinians any land to call their own. The United Nations supports this view, as does the entire Arab world, Iran, many of Israel's supposed allies, for example, Britain, France, and others, and the United States government in the form of the Obama administration. Other news often report the continuing rocket and other terrorist attacks against Israel by these same Palestinians. More on this toward the end of this installment. For those who have not done nor have had time to do research on this topic, it may be considered that somewhere in the middle of the reported news lies the true picture. It's not really that simple. What I'm about to unfold for you is the truth. Anything offered here may be researched for accuracy, and I advise everyone to do just that. President Ronald Reagan coined a phrase, trust but verify. With the way things are reported in the news today, his advice should be changed to verify, never trust. Accept no one's statements without verifying for accuracy. The following is not presented with any ideological, political, or religious agenda. It is presented as an offering of what is and what has been. It should be considered only in the context of the application of common sense and fairness. With that in mind, let's begin. To truly and fully understand the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a bit of history of the region is appropriate. The first clear use of the term Palestine refers to the entire area between Phoenicia and Egypt. This was back in the 5th century BC from ancient Greece. Palestine is, and always was, a description of an area, not the name of a country or a nation. Palestine has never been a country or a nation. It's the same as here in the U.S. Should one ask another where they live, and they answer, I live in the Southwest, or I live in the Northeast. So strictly speaking, anyone living in the red dotted lines on the map is a Palestinian, whether they be Jew, Muslim, Christian, or something else. Modern day usage, of course, limits what we call a Palestinian, those living in the occupied territories, the Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank. More on this in a bit. Israel, on the other hand, has a much older history in the region. During ancient times, circa 930 BC, Israel was made up of two countries, or regions, if you will. One was the Kingdom of Israel, also known as Samaria in the north, and the Kingdom of Judah, also known as Judea in the south. So it is rather clear that the Israelis have an historic claim to the lands in question. The use of the word kingdom is a clear reference to a Jewish nation. For the Palestinians, there is no historical claim to any area. Should the Palestinians of today have their own homeland? Of course they should. But are they owed land belonging to Israel? Not one bit. In fact, the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 181 from 1947 referred to Samaria and Judea to be carved out of the Mandate of Palestine to become the Jewish homeland, or, as we know it today, Israel. We'll get to a little more on this a little bit later. So, what is the situation today? Here, you'll see a map depicting the areas known as occupied, or a more appropriate word would be disputed. These territories came about largely due to the Six-Day War back in 1967. The occupied territories are the Golan Heights, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is somewhat different than the other two as it is self-governing. The other two are governed and protected by Israel. The entry into these areas vary in restrictions. The Golan Heights has no restrictions that I can discern. It's best to have a guide there, however, as none of the roads are labeled. You'll get lost in a heartbeat. The West Bank has border crossings jointly operated and guarded by Israelis and Palestinians. A visitor to the West Bank has no real difficulty going there. One just has to be aware of the border crossings and follow the rules. The Gaza Strip is another story altogether. It is heavily guarded by the Palestinians. Visiting there is not recommended. First, you really don't want to go there. Violence is a common occurrence. And second, unless you're a Palestinian, you can't get across the border. Let's take a look at the disputed territories a little more closely. I'm going to ignore the Golan Heights as it plays no current role in the Israel-Palestinian conflict. The governmental control center for the Palestinians is in Ramallah, located in the West Bank. When one hears of rocket attacks being initiated against Israel, they are largely coming from the Gaza Strip. As a slight aside here, with all these discussions, how big is Israel? We've all heard that it is a very small nation. But just how small or big is it really? Here's the map of Israel, to scale, laid on the map of the United States. You're right, it's actually pretty small. In fact, if one leaves Tel Aviv around 8 a.m. and drives all the way around Israel using their highway system, one could be back in Tel Aviv in time for a 7 p.m. dinner reservation. How do I know? I've done it. But the map of Israel didn't always look as it does today. Yeah, back to some more history. Arabia before World War I was owned, if you will, by the Ottoman Empire. Think of the Ottoman Empire as today's Turkey. The Ottoman Empire was on the side of Germany during the war. The Allies, of course, won the war. The Ottoman Empire and Germany lost. At the end of the war, the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary, Arthur James Balfour, orchestrated an agreement called, weirdly enough, the Balfour Declaration. This document, in essence, divided up Arabia into roughly the countries we now see in the Middle East. As a part of the Balfour Declaration, a portion of the area known as Palestine was set aside to be the Jewish national home. The size of the area designated for this purpose was a little over 46,000 square miles. Remember, the current size of Israel today is somewhat less than 11,000 square miles. Compare the original Balfour Declaration map for the Jewish national home with the area that is now Israel, shown within the red dotted line. So how, over time, did the Jewish national home shrink by some 35,000 square miles? Israel did not become an official state or nation until 1948. From 1920 to 1948, the British, the French, and the League of Nations, later the United Nations, played around with borders almost constantly. Israel seemingly lost ground at every turn. In addition, Israel on numerous occasions offered up land in the hopes of peace. An example is the UN Resolution 242, known as the Land for Peace Agreement. The offered land in this agreement was taken, but no peace ensued. In the end, the map of Israel is what we see today. The Palestinians want a homeland of their own. This is truly understandable. Unfortunately, they seemingly only want for Israel to disappear in the process. If one thinks my last assumption as to the Palestinians' desire for Israel to disappear seems a bit over the top, take a look at this. On the left, is the official seal of the Palestinians. On the right depicts what the Palestinians consider a proper map of the region. Both the seal and the map have eliminated the existence of Israel. My assumption over the top? Not hardly. To stay, in a way, on the same general topic, let's revisit the size of Israel from a different perspective. Here is the map of Israel, including all the disputed territories. Let me first remove the Gaza Strip. Next, I'll remove the Golan Heights. Finally, I'll remove the West Bank. What we have left is a map of Israel in its undisputed form. For a moment, just for fun, let's take a look at Israel compared to its neighbors. You know, the Arab and Persian Muslims that surround them. Let's look at that last picture again. Are the Palestinians, the rest of the Arab-Persian world at large, and the United Nations really trying to say there is no room for the Palestinians to have their own homeland and all that territory, except the lands of Israel, of course? That defies common sense. The Palestinians share a common ethnicity, a common religion, and a common culture with their Muslim brothers. Has but a single Muslim nation offered the Palestinians any land for their homeland? Absolutely not. And a reasonable question is, why haven't they? Clearly, it is not land that is the issue. It is the absolute requirement of the Islamic governments to have Israel disappear from the map. No amount of negotiations, no amount of land swaps, no amount of anything that allow peace in the Middle East. The Palestinians are but a tool to try and rid the area of any Jewish state. Here's a slightly different consideration. How does Israel treat the Palestinians who are citizens of Israel and live there? 1/5 of Israel's citizen population is Arab Muslim, namely Palestinians. These people have equal standing as any Jew living there, and in fact serve within the Israeli government. There have been Israeli Arab Muslim members of the Knesset, the equivalent of our Congress, ever since the first Knesset elections in 1949. Currently, the Israeli Knesset has 17 elected Arab Muslim members, as well as Christian members. In contrast, how many of the roughly 50 Muslim countries have Jewish representatives? None. So how does the UN view this Israeli inclusiveness? With repeated condemnation. Okay, what did I mean by that? Look at the number of the United Nations resolutions passed in condemnation against Israel in relation to the Israel-Palestinian issue. The total number of UN resolutions against Iran, most dealing with their nuclear program, was 11, and none on human rights. Iran, the country that executes homosexuals, that subjugates women, that executes or whips women who have been raped, that is the world's largest sponsor of terrorism, and Iran has a high-ranking seat on the UN's Human Rights Council. Give me a break. As to other resolutions, in 2015 alone, the UN passed 20 resolutions singling out Israel for criticism on human rights issues, and only 3 such resolutions on the rest of the world combined. The latest UN Resolution 2334 actually specifies that East Jerusalem, including the Western Wall, was occupied territory and illegal for Israelis to be there. The Western Wall is the most significant site in the world for the Jewish people, and the UN says it's a place illegal to Jews. Further, the UN funds and distributes textbooks to Muslim children that fully denigrate and vilify Israel. That's what I mean. The United States has always supported the state of Israel, both with aid and in the United Nations, until now it seems. From Israel's first becoming a nation during modern times, the U.S. has, for the first time, failed to support Israel in the UN Resolution 2334. This action by the Obama administration has caused many on both sides of the aisle to call for cutting all funding to the UN and for its removal from U.S. soil. We will just have to wait and see what the Trump administration does or attempts to do with respect to Israel. For a moment, let's look at the violence between the Gaza Strip Palestinians and Israel. The number of non-defensive missile attacks by the Palestinians against the Israelis has been in the thousands upon thousands. How many such attacks has Israel initiated against the Palestinians? None. Absolutely none. On the right are listed the various groups responsible for these first strike actions against Israel operating from Gaza. Let's see who and what these organizations really are. This should offer somewhat of a clue. Now, it is no secret that when attacked, Israel launches its own retaliatory missile strikes against the first strike missile bases in the Gaza Strip. It is well documented that the terrorist elements of Gaza operate with impunity by hiding amongst the innocent civilian peoples of Gaza. So, before a retaliatory strike by Israel, what does Israel do? It's called roof knocking. For years, the Israeli military has been using cell phone calls and small warning rockets, including leaflets, usually sent from drones, to tell people which buildings it is targeting and to give them time to get out. Israel has never shown any desire or intent to harm innocent civilians. The Palestinian militants, not so much. The news often seems filled with stories of anti-Semitism across the globe, especially in Europe. But the United States is not free from this, not by a long shot. Just look at the widespread acts of anti-Semitism in the U.S. over the last 2 years. A naive observer looking down at all this may well be of the opinion that the globe must be teeming with Jews. They must be everywhere in large numbers to garner this much attention and animosity. Well, here's a fact of which I was unaware until a year or so ago. In the entire world, there are less than 15 million Jews, out of a world population of around 7 billion. To put this into perspective, I ginned up a couple of factoids and an analogy, a silly one I admit, but it does kind of put some things in perspective. Just prior to closing this installment, I would like to offer a suggestion. Should you be interested in doing your own research into this topic, I would strongly suggest you start with 5 relatively short YouTube videos by Denny Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. I believe you will find them most enlightening. They cover the West Bank, the ongoing peace process, the issue of Palestinian refugees, Israel and the United Nations, and a look at the balance of power in the Middle East. The YouTube links to these videos are provided just below this video in the description. Hi again. I hope this installment has been beneficial to you, and thanks for watching.